Alright guys, finally doing the micro delta teardowns. Let me start with saying that these skates served me well, and I feel like there's a lot of animosity towards micro skates, but I generally destroy most skates within a year, and honestly, I could have retired these a little later if it wasn't for one main problem I had, and we're gonna get to that later. So one of the things that did happen is I had to replace the 45 ratchet strap with a Seba Velcro strap, which is kind of weird, being that, you know, Seba and Micro have that thing going. But yeah, the strap exploded on one of the falls. So yeah, the wear on this is pretty decent, nothing crazy. The Velcro straps, they held up pretty well. They did have some like fraying on them, and some of the stitching came off, but the most important part was that they were still sticky and they served their purpose. Same goes for the toe strap in the front. Honestly, I barely use this one. I never really loosened it, just occasionally I would. Same thing, you can see it's a bit frayed, some of the stitching came out, but the most important part was that it was still sticky even till the end. So yeah, I'm just gonna start taking these skates apart so we can get to the actual teardown part. So these aren't the original laces. The original laces were kind of like flashy. I'm a big fan of wax laces, so I instantly replaced them. If you can get wax laces, it's definitely the way to go, and I recommend it for everybody. Alright, so as far as the cuff bolts, they kind of give me a problem. The ones on the inside of the boot were pretty good. The big problem was the bolts on the outside of the boot. So the cuff bolts on the outside of the boot stuck out a little too much, so they got damaged. When I would fall, because the bolt was actually almost as big as the lip that goes around it, it would get ground down when I slid out. As you can see, I had a hard time getting it out. So I got a similar tool, just happened to fit in, and I kind of just forced my way through it. But yeah, as you can see, the bolt is pretty ground down and deformed, and that definitely was a problem. So yeah, here's the skate, slowly coming apart. You can see the wear on it. It's pretty decent. Like I said, I did use these a lot, and honestly, they had more life in them if it wasn't for one major issue, which I'm gonna get to. So as you can see, the bottom where the liner or like skin is glued onto the boot, it's holding up pretty well. It did get beat up towards the toe because that is where you fall. You know, when you fall, you kick the ground most of the time, so it eventually weakens, and then I guess the elements get in there. But generally, the seal was pretty good. And here's the thing that really made me retire the skates. So there was a huge gash in the tongue, and as you can see the foam, and the laces actually pretty much got all the way through it. This was really uncomfortable because I could feel the laces hitting my foot. And I think this was caused by the fact that the laces, they kind of ran perfectly parallel with the stitching. They ran right above it. And I feel as the tongue moved, the laces just cut through the stitching and ultimately almost through the whole tongue. And as you can see on the top of the liner, there is some wear. And like I said, it's because the tongue does shift when you skate, and it grounded down a bit on the top, but it wasn't that terrible. Alright, so here we have my right foot, and this one did have more work done on it. We're gonna get to it. So yeah, I replaced the strap on both of them. It's the same Seba Velcro strap. Here we go with the inside edge. Once again, they're a little beat up, but they're not that bad. The inside edge cuff bolts were pretty good. So the main issue is, once again, the outside cuff bolts. So when I fall on a trick, it's usually like on my outside edges. I usually slide out to the side, and this bolt has been completely ground down, and it's full of like dirt and scraps. So I actually had to pick all of that stuff out in order to take it off. And once again, I got a slightly different hex key, which happened to fit in there, and with some good amount of force, I was able to get it out. That bolt should not stick out so much. There's like a lip around it. It should definitely be smaller than the lip itself, so when you fall, it can protect the bolt. So this is the like partial cuff, I guess. It held up pretty well. It is beat up, but structural integrity is pretty good. It's still pretty strong. It did its job. Same thing with the Velcro on this side. It's pretty good. Did its job. No big complaints. So on this skate, I actually had to replace the toe strap. There's a little clip at the bottom. I was playing hockey, and I don't know, I think it may have got hit by a puck and it just broke. This is an aftermarket piece I bought on Amazon and actually installed myself. The bottom, once again, held on pretty well. It's pretty secure. The usual problem, it did come out a little around the toe area, because that is where you fall. And then once you kick it, I guess the elements get in there and it kind of weakens it. But it's overall pretty good. The tongue on this side did not have that issue. It held up really well. Same thing with the top of the cuff. Some fraying. It's a little beat up from all the rubbing. So we're actually going to start tearing down this skate, and I'm going to start at the toe, and I'm going to remove the top skin from the, I guess, the lower half. And like I said, the front is pretty beat up. It's because where you fall a lot and the elements get in. This is also true of the back on this skate, but like I said, it's where you fall. It's what hits the ground. So I'm actually going to cut myself while doing this, and I probably just used a heat gun to begin with. This is the first time that I'm ever using a heat gun, so I honestly don't know what I'm doing, but I get the hang of it, and I slowly make my way through the bottom half. So removing the top shell, or whatever you want to call it, the top of the skate from the bottom carbon fiber part was actually pretty easy. So yeah, like I said, I've never done this before. It was really a big learning experience, and it's something I've always wanted to do with skates. So here we have the moment where I finally separate the bottom shell with the rest of the skate. And as you can see, we have the bottom shell, the liner, and then the skin on top. So here I'm peeling off the upper skin from the actual liner. And on the bottom it was pretty easy, but the more I got to the top, I don't know, I guess the adhesive was stronger there, or I guess it was less exposed to damaging elements. So I had to pull out the heat gun again and actually use a razor to get the top off it completely. And like I said, this was a learning experience. I didn't know what to expect. I've never done this. I never tore down a skate to this level before, and honestly, it was pretty enjoyable. Here I'm cutting off the tongue because it just makes it easier to handle. What's interesting is that hockey skates actually have replaceable tongues, and the tongue of the skate can really affect it. I wish that inline skates also did this. Here we go, almost off. Put up quite the fight. So finally, we have the skin separated from the liner, or the upper, I guess. We have all three parts. We have the upper, the liner, and the bottom half. So we're gonna start with a carbon fiber bottom half. I've never held the lower half of a skate in my hands before. It's pretty cool to have it. As you can see, we have the mounting points, which I'm gonna look at more fully later. We still had this little like thin foam on the bottom, and I did want to take a closer look at the mounting points, so I had to remove that off. I didn't do the best of jobs removing it, but I removed enough of it to show how the mounting point was embedded or installed into the actual carbon shell. So as you can see, it's a nice solid piece of metal holding the several mounting points, and it's like woven or embedded inside of the carbon. So all the important things for the skate as far as structural are in the carbon fiber shell. We have the power strap, we have the cuff, and as you can see, it goes all the way up above your ankle. You can see the V cut in the back. It's kind of cool because this looks like a speed skate essentially. If I almost can just like put a new upper on it, I essentially would have a speed skate. As you can see, it's really strong and rigid, virtually no flex in it. There was more flex around the cuff area, but I imagine that's necessary. Next up is what we call the liner essentially, or what's left of it. So the front of the liner was essentially no padding. It was like this thick cotton or felt. I don't know exactly what it was, but yeah, besides that, there was no padding. And as we progressively got to the back, the padding actually increased. So I'm gonna cut it open here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So as you can see, the padding does increase towards the back, especially around your ankle, your heel, and your Achilles tendon. It's just as thick towards the top of the liner, and honestly, that's where you need the most support and the most padding. I like liners like this. I don't like liners that are equally thick all around because you really don't need all that padding in the front. And this kind of lets you downsize, you know, because you have all the padding where it matters, where you need it. And this is the upper, but yeah, it's made of this like plastic, like vinyl mostly. It has like this hexagon pattern going all over it, and then some parts do have what seem to be leather, like the lower parts. It held up pretty well, to be honest. There was some parts like the non-removable slide guard which got pretty beat up. I really wish it was replaceable. So if we look at the inside, the whole inside of it is actually what seems to be like cardboard, I guess, to make it more rigid and give it more structure. It runs all along the inside of it. It's particularly thicker around the back of your foot, around your heel. And once again, that's the most important part, around your heel and your ankle. That's where you need the most support. And as you can see, it's thicker towards the back. Well, yeah, that's the upper, and now we've gone through the whole skate. All right, we're done. This was quite the experience. I've never torn down a skate to this level. I literally have the lower half, the liner, and the upper. And it was a good experience to see how the skate was put together. Like I said, this skate served me well. I destroyed most skates within around a year. And the only reason I really had to get rid of it is because the tongue got destroyed and the laces were going through and hurting my foot. But otherwise, I was pretty happy with this skate. And that's it. See you next time.